This episode is brought to you by Mortgage Workflow Partners and the Mastering Encompass series, both for users as well as administrators. You can find out all the information about it over at masteringencompass.com. Also, if you'd like to check out what we're doing on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel using the @MasteringEncompass handle. And make sure you stay up to date on all the information, not just with podcasts, but also video content that we bring to you as often as possible. Now let's get on to the episode. Hey everybody, Larry Bailey here. Welcome to another mortgage community meeting. Thank you for all those that show up here in person. If you're ever wanting to come on here live, head over to mortgage.community, grab a free account if you don't already have one, and show up at 4 o'clock Eastern. We meet usually for 30 minutes. Today's topic, all about how to use Encompass Workflow Engine. So a couple of things. First of all, just to let you know, I've been using Workflow Engine and Encompass Web now with clients, hey Craig, for about 2 years. And so everything I'm going to show you in today and we're going to talk about is all about the things that I've learned. We're also going to go over new settings that came out with 24.2. We're going to go over real live use cases that you can use today, like right now. So definitely want to make sure you're involved in that. And then lastly, of course, this is a community. So please use the chat and post any questions. If you're watching this on replay, we post all this in the community as well as on YouTube using the Mastering Encompass channel. Go ahead and post any questions in the comments and we'll get right back to you with any answers. And on that mark, if you guys are up for YouTube, go ahead and check out our Mastering Encompass channel. Go ahead and like and subscribe. It's doing pretty well on the YouTube circuit, which is wildly crazy, but it's great to see we're getting information out there. So first of all, Workflow Engine. Specifically, a lot of people get this confused. They think you have to use Encompass Web to use Workflow Engine, and that's 1 trillion bazillion % not true. You can use Workflow Engine just like you're going to use all of your business rules, because remember, it's one Encompass. And I know I talked about this before. There's a lot of confusion on what Encompass Web is, and some of it has to do with the conversations that came from ICE. Some of it has to do with conversations that have come from partners like myself. I was part of the confusion as well. And so what's been great is to get on the right talking track, which is to say Encompass is Encompass. There are some settings that you'll find exclusively in web. There's some settings you'll find exclusively in desktop. Eventually, ideally, they'll all be in one place, and we're getting there. Chris, yes, I am doing pumpkins, wherever the heck that thing is back over there. That's my wife's fault. She took out, she decided that we're not going to decorate for fall in September, October. We're going to decorate fall in August because that's what you do. Dude, like, come on, get with it, Chris. Anyway, has anyone built a Workflow Engine rule? Let's go ahead and share screen. Let's go ahead and put everything into context. I'll bring that up on screen right now. And so there it is, right? And Dan's using it for automation to run it for flood. So what does that mean? So what Dan did was Dan's got a service built set up to allow for automation. And there are automation workflow rules that run behind this. And so that's also part of the confusion, right? When you think about Workflow Engine, a lot of times you might think this, because that's kind of maybe what I even trained you. But as Dan points out, Workflow Engine isn't just that. It's also, if you go to the Services tab and you go to Services Management, you see automation rules right here. And what's really important is there's 2 kinds of automation rules that have historically come up. The first one we had was ASO, Automated Service Ordering Bot. That's being deprecated. So by the end of this year, you're no longer going to see that as even an option. So if you are, as a side note, if you are running any rules under ASO Bot, you need to get off of ASO Bot today, like now, and move to Workflow Engine. So that's number one. Thanks, Dan, for pointing that out. But so Dan came down the flood. He built out a Workflow Engine rule. So you would click add, and then you'd go add your flood service rule, and you'd add your flood service provider over here. And let's pretend it's CoreLogic because everybody's with CoreLogic, right? So you'd run your rule over here. And this is all Workflow Engine different from workflow rules, and we'll talk about that detail in a second. So Candace says we've had a few, meaning automation rules. We had some in automated enhanced conditions, but underwriting processors didn't like it, Candace. Wait a minute. Side note, why didn't they like Candace? You got to be straight with everybody, because if you didn't read this comment from Candace, you definitely want to understand this. So Candace has some underwriters and processors who didn't like automated conditions, so automated enhanced conditions. So I definitely want to hear from you more on that. They still want control when the conditions get added. Your business owner should, and I should have a conversation, Candace. So that is absolutely unacceptable. If the conditions need to be there, then they need to be there. I'm going to fight for you on that. And mostly I'm fighting for your loan quality. Truthfully, I could really, I'm not that personal about your conditions, but the reason why enhanced automated conditions are such a game changer is for loan quality. And I've gone over that with enhanced conditions. If you want to hear me soapbox on that particular topic, head over to those. I think I've done 3 or 4 on enhanced conditions, and I'll probably do 3 or 4 more in my lifetime, I'm sure. Brian adds easy win, move any all business field trigger emails notifications over to workflow rules and utilize DNS and not SMT. Brian, it's like I'm preaching, it's like you're preaching to the choir, man. It's everything that Brian just said, especially moving the DNS version of sending out email confirmations instead of using SMTP. I said this last week, I think. And so what the heck are we talking about? What we're talking about is in notification templates when you go to sender configuration right here. This is all DNS. And what that means is your IT team no longer has the issues with SMTP, which is it's a gap. It's a security gap, quite honestly. So Sean Foote, definitely. If you go into automation, your ASO bot it's DOA, man. So you gotta get rid of that. Dan says we migrated from ASO. ASO had a lot of problems. There's a cool off period. There's things where it didn't run, all kinds of stuff. So Dan's on the right track. Thank you, Dan, for doing that. We now have tasks set up to fire when flood service is fulfilled. Oh, so Dan's taking it to the next level. Dan, we got to maybe we do a session. Maybe we do a cohort session for everybody using. We'll do like a recording of a small group if you're up for it. Of all of everybody else has got to get on the bandwagon for this. Luba says, according to what I said, they enhanced conditions should be done through workflow rules, not automated condition setting. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. So Luba's post on chat here is, according to what I said, enhanced conditions should be done through workflow rules, which is correct, not automated condition setting. Now, so Luba, I'm imagining you're thinking automated condition setting in desktop, and so I want to peel that apart for just a second. Luba looks like responded. Yes. Okay, cool. So what Luba is talking about is in desktop, in business rules, there's a thing that says automated enhanced conditions. And what you do is you create a set there to run. And the reason why that's fine, Luba, and I don't know who told you that, but it's totally, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And I can tell you why you would do it one way or another. So let's get into a workflow rule. So workflow rules are part of Workflow Engine. Workflow Engine as the whole environment, it includes for automated services. And there's going to be some other things that are happening too. Brian, we're going to talk about automation audit. Absolutely. I'm actually going to show you a system and it's going to blow you away when it comes to automated conditions. So I'm just going to go to the result because this is important. We can apply enhanced conditions. And when we apply enhanced conditions, in Luba's case, if you just have this radio button selected, it's going to go to desktop settings and it's going to run through all of that. And that's great. I think that's great. Matter of fact, the reason why it's great is because it's built that way. You have 2 paths to go down. You can build out your pyramid of automated conditions to run with specific conditions in desktop under the business rules again. And when you just have this running, it will fire through all of those. Now, as an admin, that's great because I can look in one place and see all of my rules in one spot. Like, when are these conditions going to fire? If you come over here and select this radio button, now you have to come in and select your individual conditions. So think about that. You've got to fire individual ones, or you can fire the entire set. The correct answer is it depends on your use case. If you've got a unique thing that happens, like a file goes to, loan type goes to PUD, right? The loan type, the property type is change, and the answer is it's PUD. I probably just want to use the apply selected conditions. Same thing for like flood zone or, whatever. Like, it could be anything. But if you've got a macro set of conditions that needs to apply on the whole file, you've got 10 or 12 based upon one answer and 13 or 14 on another answer, use the first radio button and let it run through all of the settings within the business rules of desktop to go through that. Luba, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? Let me know. Let's see, what else did I miss? Chris says they want more work. Oh yeah, the processors. No, and I'm going to go back. This is a response to what Candace had said, going back to the operations team not really liking, quote unquote, the automation, quote unquote, of enhanced conditions. And when I go through workflow settings, I do a lot of workflow reviews for companies large and small. And when I get to the underwriters, this is what happens. I say to the underwriter, how long does it take you to underwrite a file? And they say it takes them like an hour, right? It's average an hour. And I say, okay. And I watch them do their work. And what they're doing is they're mentally clearing conditions on things that they've looked at. And they're not adding that condition to the file. That shows they cleared that condition. And this is why enhanced conditions with new doc viewer on web is going to be a game changer for a lot of underwriters, because the desktop version of file manager and document manager is a little bit, it's fine, but it's a little bit, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But the web version, if you have the right size screen, works really well, because not only does it present the document in front of you with the condition, but it also gives you the document status and the condition status. And it's easy for the underwriter to go through on that initial submission or resubmission. As long as you've configured your documents to be tied to your conditions properly, it's there for them. And they can just go through, clear it, review, clear, review, reject, add more conditions, whatever. So the reason why we want automated and workflows, gang, for conditions, even if it's for the basic, every file gets them, is so the underwriter actually puts their thumbprint on that condition to be cleared. That's what you want. And that's what I advocate for. And that's why loan quality issues come up, especially if you have property type change or loan type change or occupancy change. All of these things happen. Or you've got a brand new product, or you've got an underwriter who hasn't seen that kind of a loan in a while. They're just I'm going to say there's an opportunity for improvement, and you want to help educate them on the value, right? People don't want to do things that there's no value. And so if you can show them the value, they'll be on board. As a matter of fact, when you show them the value and they get it, they usually become more of your raving fans. Just tell everybody else why it changed their life for the better. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. So back on track, workflow rules, triggering events. When you go through and you're dealing with workflow rules in here for Workflow Engine, what I want you to think about is, what do I have to pay attention to? Normally, you might think of field value changes. You might think of milestones being finished. You might think, if you've got some plugins looking at virtual fields, maybe you can kind of spin up some virtual fields into a standard custom field with a plugin. Yeah, in workflow rules, you can do a lot of stuff natively that you just can't do otherwise reliably. So loan created, gang. Loan gets created. You can now go through, that's the event. The loan is created. We haven't had that as Encompass admins, but now you do. And you can build conditions in off of that. You can build as many as you want in here. Strongly suggest that you use the query builder, because when you get into looking for field IDs, you've got standard fields, you've got custom fields, and the all-elusive virtual fields. We all know, and I've said this a million years because I've been teaching admin since 2011, you don't build rules off of virtual fields because they don't actually exist to control your rules reliably, especially for triggering events. You can do that now in here reliably, all of your virtual fields. Now, can you do special code like you're used to doing, some special syntax in desktop for everything? Gang, if it's not on this punch list, you're not using it. But if I were to come into document.date received and click apply, it's going to ask me which document. So let's just say it's the bank statement. It's going to give you the syntax here, document.date received, which is exactly what we're used to doing. And then you can select the correct operator, and then whatever, right? Or you can do your operator for, is not empty date field. And it's going to give you the syntax here. If you feel comfortable free typing this, go for it. But especially if you get into nested statements or grouped statements, remember, you've got this query builder, and I would encourage you to learn how to build out these groups and how to change these operands. And so that if I were to fill this out, when we get back to condition editor, you'll see how it breaks out into the statement. It's very easy to get lost in complicated conditional statements. And I would always encourage you, especially in web, leverage the query builder. I don't really care how adept you are. It's very common in web-based configurations to use query builders to make sure the syntax is what the system is looking for. Just giving you a heads up here. So let's go back to triggering events for a second. Loan created, you've got milestone completed, big whoop. Roles being assigned. So if you have roles that are in here, you can now, when the role is assigned to either a user, or if you've got a user group in that particular role in your desktop settings, you now can select which user, when that user is assigned, do something. Think about the applications for this if you have decentralized branches, or if you've got teams, things like that. Like these are all opportunities for you to build out rules that are specific and function within your workflow in a meaningful way. Cool. So that's roles being assigned. You've got ready for homeowners insurance requests. Gang, this is like a Consumer Connect thing that's tied into Geico. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Or if you don't use Consumer Connect, don't worry about it. But that's why this is here. If that looks odd to you, it's just a unique thing with Geico. Document being added to the e-folder, file being attached to an e-folder. So if you wanted to pick something in here, you could select your document folder, and you add, if I can add in here. So let's say something got added to the appraisal, right? And so we come in here, and this is a file being attached to the appraisal. Really simple. We've got condition being added. So which condition got added? We've got, if we keep on going, condition status updated. The pay stub was updated to received, and maybe that triggers something. You guys are getting this, right? Like this is stuff that you couldn't have done before, and it's important that you understand what's possible. So as you're thinking about your workflow and trying to get people out of Outlook, and God forbid you get into task-based workflows and start giving them a task list of things that have to get done, or notifications, if you like email, notifications to let them know that something needs to be reviewed, you can do that. Here's something that's nifty, service order fulfilled. So back up in the chat, Dan, I think you're using this, right? You said you were using service order fulfilled and you picked your service. I think you said flood, if I'm not mistaken. So flood does something. So, when the flood comes back from CoreLogic, do something, and we're gonna get into the results after we're done here. Task groups, I know everybody's not using tasks yet. And part of this is also the UI, because you don't want people to work on Encompass Web. I get it. Wait till December. So in December, ICE is working to get web launchable from desktop. So we'll see what kind of shortcuts that presents in getting people to use Encompass Web UI in addition to using desktop. We'll see how that goes. And then of course you got all your task-based stuff here. And then scheduler completed. So is anyone fooling around with scheduler yet? Earlier today in the admins mastering Encompass, we talked about the scheduler. We still have to do some tests. Brian, you're using it. It's working now in 24.2. Please let us know. We're all anxious because Amy and I we're gonna spend this weekend and test it. But if you're already doing it, you saved us time, Brian. So thank you, sir. Chris says, I assume the fulfill role has to be completely separate rule from ordering. I would say so in plain language, Chris, because if you've got one event where the service is being ordered, the triggering event is probably not going to be the same, because again, your triggering event here is service order fulfilled, right? And so that's different from an action to order the service. So yeah, I would say. So Brian says the scheduler is running. We're using it for counting down days. Yes. So everybody pay attention to what Brian just said. What we're talking about here is scheduler templates. This was not working effectively for everyone, maybe even anyone, I'm not sure, with 24.1. Some great ideas that are being used. Equals file start, the start date of that is lock date if it changes and it counts down. Yeah, so by the way, Brian, if you don't mind sharing in the community, you can export, right? So if you pick your scheduler and you click export, if you don't mind sharing that with the community, if that's not, if that's okay, that would be great. But no pressure if you don't want to, seriously, I'm not being cute. But these are things that people just don't know how to do. So anything that we can share in the community, that's why it's there. Going back to workflow rules. I know I'm talking fast because I got a lot to cover. So you can see some of the ideas that are out there. We've got the ability to launch a scheduler. We've got the ability to look at an appraisal review when a file gets attached, right? That's an idea. We've got the ability to do an LP preview, LP review for running a service for LPA, because that's not something that automatically runs. You have to remember to do it. Sending it disclosures automatically. So remember that one of the workflow rules that you have the ability to engage in is the ability for the result. We're getting to results. The resulting action is to send disclosures. Now, part of what happens in the results that I'll show outline here, because it's on screen, is you have the ability to create nests. So when you have a resulting action, not only can you have 5 resulting actions in one rule, but you can have nested actions within actions. And so if you remember, earlier this year when I was talking about the complexities of how Encompass is going to be administered and how critically important it is for you to know your workflow, this is why. If you think your business is going to tell you that you should do these kinds of things based upon what they want, I think you're dreaming. You have to know what the workflow is going to be, and you have to be aware of what's possible to make the workflow better. That's where your value comes in. That's where, as an administrator for Encompass, that's where I would encourage you to be. That's where I know you can be if you stay on top of what's happening here. Brian says, for the scheduler, make sure you have both ends of the scheduler, a rule to start and a rule for when it completes. This is really important. So to Brian's idea here, if we start a scheduler, if the scheduler, let's say as an example, it's the scheduler to make sure initial disclosures are sent. You would want to make sure, as 3142 is currently a date, but 3152 is not. 3152 is the initial disclosures sent. So if we need disclosures, but we don't have disclosures, community doesn't support upload a JSON zip it. Not, you know what I mean? Like create a zip file, right? Try to zip it. Yeah, you can't do a lot of those kinds of things natively in the community. You have to put it into a zip file. So it's important to create the stop also. If you want to make sure you don't have a lot of these errant actions happening. So the point is, if the point of the scheduler was to run 2 days to make sure disclosures are sent, make sure you have a rule to stop the scheduler if disclosures are sent. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's go into some of the results. The conditions, again, we've gone through. By the way, just like everything else, if you're anywhere in Encompass Web, click the icon up in the upper right, this circle with the question, and click Encompass Help. ICE has done a fantastic job of giving you help articles straight up right here. Remember, this is not published, but it is public. So this URL is public. Anybody can get to it. You don't need a special code. But to know to get to that URL, you have to be where you need to be. Elena says, just so I'm correct, you can export the JSON and then someone can import it into their Encompass. Yeah, so we were just talking about notification templates. But if I wanted to import, I can import in here. So, yep, you can do that, Elena. You can go ham on the import of JSON. And Brian is multitasking and putting it into the thing. Brian, wait for the repost, or wait for the post for the replay, rather, and then we'll tie it into this, if you don't mind, pretty please. Where was I? Results. So results, request evidence of homeowners insurance. That's tied into that whole insurance thing with Geico. Now you can, if you click and add this, it'll say homeowners insurance policy. So it doesn't have to be for Geico, but the idea was we were, if you want to do that specifically, you can, and you can send out a specific email template for that option. Another one that comes up is applying enhanced conditions. We heard a lot about this today. So remember, in order to apply enhanced conditions, you have to have enhanced conditions. If you guys are getting stuck, by the way, on your enhanced conditions project because it just feels like it's too much, let me know directly. I've got some tips to try to help you with your team and making that happen, because it is really challenging. Some companies are running into a lot of hard stops internally with managing this move to even an idea of enhanced conditions. So I have some concepts for you to help out. Under the assign role, obviously, if we assign that, we can pick the role that you want to assign automatically. So this is where you can pick anybody you want in that role, as well as a user group, if the user group's in that role. Another resulting action is updating a custom field. Now, you might be looking for a standard field. Yeah, it's not there yet. It's just not built for that yet. So if you're looking for standard fields off of field triggers, off of actions, probably field triggers is your go-to move right now. You can also update the enhanced condition tracking status. So a good example for this is you want to mark something fulfilled because a file comes into a particular document, right? Or something else happens and you want to update that enhanced condition tracking status. Some other big use cases for this is if you went through and the file goes from FHA to conventional and you want to actually waive all the FHA specific conditions, you can. Result is ordering service, right? And so when we come in here and order a service, we can add in, you have to set up your automated service ordering rules, which is what we talked about earlier. But this is how Brian was able to set up the flood order right from here. We can go through and update a service order. Good use case for this is we received a file in the purchase agreement or the contract of sale document, whatever it is you want to call it. And when you receive that, you can update the appraisal order if you didn't have that already, right? And so that's important. That's just one example. You can create tasks. Again, this goes back to tasks. You can see it's a big deal to talk about tasks. And if your team is spending, like most, an average of half of their day, 50% of their day, 4 hours to 5 hours of their day in Outlook, yeah, that's why tasks are a big deal. Every time study I've done with companies, they're at 40 to 50% of their day, their teams are staring at their Outlook to figure out what they're supposed to do next. That's a problem. Another action is starting a scheduler we talked about, and then here's that cancel scheduler action that we also talked about. The last two down here are sending notifications. Remember, if you're going to send a notification, you've got to build your notification template first. I know it sounds rudimentary, but I've seen people get tripped up where they're trying to build out a rule and they want to send it out and they're like, wait, where is it? Yeah, you have to build the notification template first. And the last is sending disclosures. So just like you saw me add in the other rule, if you come through, you can add nested actions. All right, I can keep going. I'm here all day. So the idea is nested action, you can do whatever you have here. Create a task, start a schedule, or send a notification based upon all this. So talked a lot, probably good one to replay if you haven't, if you want to learn more. Workflow engine, it involves not only workflow rules, but also involves your automation and your services management. There's much more to come on Workflow Engine. Workflow Engine is what's powering all of your vendor management information. It's what's powering all of our current customizations in here with regards to workflow management, workflow rules. It's an extraordinarily powerful server-side engine that's running a lot of what is on the Connect platform. And there's much more to come from ICE Mortgage Technology on this. and hopefully you can do something. Brian, I'll get the replay up probably tomorrow. I'll shoot you a note and ask you to upload that zip file to marry up with what you're doing. Thank you for sharing that. If anybody else comes up with a cool rule and you want to share it, I don't think anybody's going to turn you down. And that's all I have for today. Again, if anything I can ever do for you to make the community better, let me know. And hopefully you do some really cool stuff here with Workflow Engine. Hopefully this is worth your time. Did I hit 1,000, Elena? I did hit 1,000, Elena. Thank you for spreading the word. I don't know why 1,000 is a big deal, but it is. It's 4 digits, so why not? You guys have a great rest of your day. Make it a great one, and do something wonderful. Let us know what you do, and we'll catch you next year. Next year, listen to me. We'll catch you next episode. I'm going to be here throughout the rest of this year. I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Be well. Take care. Happy New Year. Happy Halloween, Chris. You too, bud. I'll see you.